quiet room, a distant city hum through the window, maybe the slow, steady ticking of a clock. Now imagine all of that cuts to black. No music, no notifications, no background noise at all. For a split second you probably felt it, that tiny, almost embarrassing urge to reach for something, your phone, a tab, any distraction, to fill the gap. Most people think that moment is a test of character. If you feel restless in silence, you must be undisciplined, weak, or somehow broken. However, this view is completely misguided. The way you react when everything goes quiet is not a moral verdict. It is a reflection of how your brain has been trained by your environment. And this is not a metaphor, it is biology. Your brain evolved for survival in a world where silence usually meant danger. No voices, no movement, no signals from the tribe. In other words, your nervous system is wired to scan, to seek stimulation, to avoid stillness that feels uncertain and unsafe. The problem is that modern life has turned this ancient wiring into a 24/7 noise machine. Constant music, endless scrolling, podcasts while you cook, videos while you eat. Your brain has learned that every spare second should come with an immediate reward. So when the noise suddenly stops, it panics a little. And guess what? That panic is not proof that you lack discipline. It is proof that your brain has done exactly what it was trained to do. You have probably heard the story. Truly disciplined people love silence. They sit still with their thoughts for hours. They never feel bored or fidgety. But this idea is completely wrong. The brain does not naturally crave stillness. It craves comfort, energy conservation, and easy dopamine. This is because quiet time often comes with effort, thinking deeply, facing worries, choosing long-term work over short-term entertainment. Here's the most important detail. What you do in those quiet moments is not a measure of your worth as a person. It is a mirror of your habits and systems. In this scenario, when no one is texting you, no one is watching, and no notification is telling you what to care about, your default routines walk onto the stage. Do you open the hard project or open another app? Do you plan your day or drift into worry? A famous study once found that many people would rather give themselves small electric shocks than sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. If silence feels threatening to you, you are in very crowded company. The problem is that most people stop there. They assume, I just cannot handle quiet, and run back to the noise. But silence does not have to be an attack. Used correctly, it becomes a training ground, a daily workout for focus, emotional regulation, and real discipline that does not depend on willpower alone. By the end of this video, you will know how to redesign those silent moments so your brain actually feels rewarded for them instead of punished. We are going to turn quiet from something you escape into something you quietly, surprisingly, start to enjoy. But before we turn silence into your training ground, we need to clear something up. Because right now, most people are fighting the wrong enemy. The common story goes like this. If you cannot sit in silence, if you cannot focus without music, if you reach for your phone every 30 seconds, it must mean you lack discipline, weak character, soft mind. And guess what? That story feels true because you see the evidence every time you try to be still and end up scrolling. However, this view is completely misguided. Your struggle with quiet is not a moral failure. It is a design conflict. Your brain was not built for calm, 21st century deep work sessions. It was built for one thing above all, survival. This is because for almost all of human history, staying alive depended on conserving energy, reacting fast, and never ignoring possible threats. In other words, your brain's job is not to help you sit and reflect on your life purpose for 30 minutes. Its job is to scan, to predict, to protect. Long ago, silence in the environment often meant something was wrong. No voices, no crackling fire, no animal sounds could mean isolation, a predator nearby, or a lack of resources. In this scenario, being relaxed in silence was dangerous. Feeling slightly on edge was the safer option, so your brain evolved to treat stimulation, noise, movement, social signals as a kind of safety blanket. Being around others meant protection. Hearing things meant the world was active and predictable. Even today, that ancient software is running. When the room goes quiet, your brain does not think, "What a perfect time for deep reflection." It thinks, "Why is there nothing happening? Did we lose the tribe? Are we missing something important?" Here's the most important detail. Modern success demands almost the opposite of what your ancient brain prefers. Today, the big rewards go to people who can do quiet, focused, distraction-free work. Writing, coding, studying, planning, learning difficult skills. These all require sustained effort with very little immediate reward. Meanwhile, your brain is still optimized for quick hits of stimulation, social cues, and instant comfort. The problem is that your environment happily feeds that old wiring. Your phone offers social approval on demand. Music gives you constant background noise. Notifications provide never-ending micro-dramas, so when you finally turn everything off, your brain interprets the silence as both boring and unsafe. No stimulation, no obvious reward, and way too much space for uncomfortable thoughts. So here is the reframe. Silence is not a moral test you keep failing. It is a mismatch between an ancient operating system and a hyper-stimulating world that has trained your brain to panic when things go quiet. Once you understand that, you can stop blaming your character and start redesigning the way your brain experiences quiet. You start to see this the moment the noise actually stops. You walk in after work, drop your bag, sit on the couch in a perfectly quiet room, and your hand reaches for your phone before you even know you decided anything. No notification, no vibration, just silence. And suddenly your brain is like, "We need something, now." This is because in that silent gap, your ancient wiring wakes up. The brain scans the environment and thinks, no immediate reward, no stimulation, no clear threat, just effort waiting to happen. In other words, it predicts boredom, and boredom feels unsafe to a brain that's survived by constantly scanning for new information. So it throws you an escape route. Check your messages, open that app, turn something on. Same thing when you open a book. You sit down, the room is quiet, you read 2 pages, and then out of nowhere you feel a strong urge to quickly check notifications. Nothing external changed. The only thing that appeared was silence. And guess what? Your brain interpreted that silence as a signal to search for faster, more guaranteed pleasure. Lying in bed, lights off, no sound. This should be the calmest moment of your day. Instead, you suddenly find yourself scrolling aimlessly. You are not even enjoying it. You are just avoiding being alone with unstructured thoughts. The problem is that your brain has been trained by your environment to associate quiet with discomfort and your phone with instant relief. Now look at the gym versus couch moment. You are sitting there in silence, debating, do I change into workout clothes or do I stay where I am? In this scenario, the silence is like a fork in the road. One path is effort, sweat, long-term reward. The other is staying seated and opening a screen. Your brain labels the silent pause as a perfect window to escape into easy stimulation instead of action, because action costs energy and the couch does not. The same pattern shows up with studying versus TikTok. A student opens the laptop in a quiet room, fully intending to study. Before a single paragraph is read, the silence makes the brain crave something more, immediately rewarding. A tiny thought appears, just one video. That urge shows up before any conscious, logical decision. It is not a moral failure, it is default programming. So when you procrastinate in silence, it is not proof that you are lazy or defective. It is proof that your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. Avoid unnecessary effort and chase quick dopamine whenever the environment leaves space for it. Here's the most important detail: this is trainable. If silence exposes how often you escape into distractions, that is not a verdict on your character. It is a clear, fixable signal of how your brain has been shaped so far. So now you are sitting there in that quiet room. No music, no notifications, no one asking you for anything. And suddenly it feels like work just to exist. That is not an accident. That is the beginning of a silent war. On one side, you have the modern world. Schools expect you to sit still, focus, and regulate your emotions for 6-7 hours straight while your phone is buzzing in your pocket. Jobs demand that you answer emails, jump on calls, hit deadlines, and stay productive in open offices where 10 conversations happen at once. Even self-improvement culture expects you to read, journal, meditate, and grind through routines every day, all while you live inside an environment built for instant entertainment. On the other side, you have your brain. Not the polished, disciplined version you like to imagine, but the ancient hunter-gatherer software underneath. Its main priorities are survival, comfort, and energy conservation. In other words, it is lazy on purpose. It wants to avoid unnecessary effort, stick to familiar paths, and grab any quick reward it can find. Silence, to this brain, is suspicious. In the wild, quiet often meant danger. So when you sit at a desk in a silent room, your hunter-gatherer brain does not think, "Perfect, time for deep work." It thinks, "Something is wrong. Where is the stimulation? Where is the predictable reward?" And guess what? The moment that discomfort appears, it starts offering you exits. Check your phone, open a new tab, turn on music, text someone, anything to fill the void. Meanwhile, the world around you behaves like a supercomputer that never sleeps. Notifications flash like tiny alarms. Infinite scroll gives you an endless river of novelty. On-demand music, podcasts, and chatter create a constant background hum. This is because your environment has been engineered to keep your attention moving. The problem is that this supercomputer baseline makes true silence feel unnatural, even threatening, like you have been unplugged from life itself. So you try to fight back with willpower. You tell yourself, "I will just focus. I will be disciplined." For a few minutes, it works. You white-knuckle your way through the urge to check your phone. But here's the most important detail. Willpower is like trying to outlift evolution with one arm. In this scenario, your hunter-gatherer brain has millions of years of practice. Your conscious discipline has maybe a few months. Eventually, fatigue wins. This is why people in studies would rather give themselves small electric shocks and sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. It is not because they are weak. It is because the environment trained their brain to fear stillness. So the real test of character is not whether you can overpower all of this in a single heroic silent session. It is whether you are willing to redesign your environment so that silence stops attacking you and starts quietly working on your side. And this is exactly where someone like James Clear walks into the room. If you have read Atomic Habits, you know his core argument is almost annoyingly simple. Your life does not rise to the level of your goals, it falls to the level of your systems. The problem is that most people still secretly believe discipline is about heroic willpower, about waking up one day and finally trying harder. However, this view is completely misguided. James Clear shows that your brain is mostly following scripts written by your environment. If your phone is on the desk, the check it script fires. If your workspace is cluttered, the "I'll start later" script wins. In other words, the people you think of as naturally disciplined are usually just people who have designed fewer bad options and clearer good ones. And guess what? This applies to silence more than almost anything else. We imagine that focused, calm people simply love quiet. They do not. Their brain likes comfort and immediate reward just as much as yours. The difference is design. They have systems that tell their brain what silence means. Here's the most important detail. Real discipline does not come from force. It comes from design. In this scenario, when the noise stops, their brain is not left wandering around looking for stimulation. Silence is already labeled. When it's quiet and I sit at this desk, I open the notebook and plan my day. When I put my headphones in with no music, I review my goals. These are tiny, pre-written routines, not bursts of motivation. This is because uncertainty is exhausting. When your brain does not know what to do with quiet, it panics and reaches for the fastest, easiest distraction. That is why, in that famous 2014 study, many people preferred giving themselves electric shocks over sitting alone with their thoughts for a few minutes. It was not that they were weak, their silence had no script. Disciplined people remove that uncertainty. They add constraints, triggers, and clear. First moves. 5 minutes of phone-free silence after coffee automatically becomes deep work warm-up. The commute becomes review the day. The walk without music becomes scan my emotions. It looks like self-control, but it is really choreography. So instead of telling yourself, I am weak because I cannot sit in silence, try a different sentence. I have never been taught how to design my silent moments so my brain knows what to do with them. Feel the difference? One attacks your character. The other invites you to build a system, because once you do, something strange starts to happen. Your brain begins to associate quiet with clarity, progress, and even relief. Silence stops feeling like an empty room and starts feeling like a well-equipped gym for your attention. So let's be honest about what usually happens in that well-equipped gym for your attention. You sit down in silence, determined to focus. 2 minutes later, your brain starts whispering, check. Your phone, adjust the chair, maybe make tea. You resist for a bit, then cave, then scroll, then binge, then suddenly an hour is gone. And when the noise comes back, so does the self-hate. This is the part almost nobody talks about. The way you replay the day in your head. Why can't I just sit still? Why am I like this? What is wrong with me? That quiet time doesn't feel restorative. It feels like a courtroom where you are the judge, the jury, and the accused. It is exhausting. It drains your energy before you have even done any real work. But here's the reversal you need to hear very clearly. You are not the problem. Your brain is not broken. The problem is that your time and environment are structured in a way that makes silence feel like a threat instead of a reward. In other words, your current setup trains your brain to associate quiet with boredom, anxiety, and unfinished tasks, while associating noise with immediate comfort. And guess what? This is because your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do: avoid discomfort, conserve effort, and chase predictable rewards. In an environment where a phone is always within reach and stimulation is one tap away, distraction will always win against unstructured silence. In this scenario, willpower does not stand a chance for long. So here's the twist that most people never see coming. By the time you decide what to do with that quiet moment, your brain has usually already decided for you. This is not mystical, it's timing. Before you feel an urge, there's a tiny, invisible negotiation happening in your nervous system. Your brain is constantly scanning options and asking 3 questions. How much effort will this cost? How much reward will I get? How risky does it feel for my comfort and survival? And guess what? This calculation finishes before your conscious story about discipline even starts. In other words, What feels like you choosing is often you walking onto a stage where the script has already been written. Imagine you open your laptop in a silent room, intending to study. In this scenario, a few hundred milliseconds before you move your fingers, your brain has already compared paths. Path 1, open the textbook, spend energy, face uncertainty, maybe feel stupid. Path 2, click on social media, get color, motion, likes, novelty. Immediate reward, almost zero effort, zero threat. This is because your brain was not designed for your long-term goals. It was designed to conserve energy and avoid discomfort right now. So your hand drifts to the trackpad without thinking. You tell yourself a story about weak willpower, but biologically, you just followed the option that had already been tagged as high reward, low effort. Psychologists have a name for this bias: cognitive ease. Your brain loves the path of least resistance. When the environment goes quiet, the easiest path is rarely deep reflection or hard, meaningful work. It is passive consumption: scroll, watch, snack, daydream, anything that gives a little hit of comfort without demanding much effort. You can see this in those tiny, embarrassing micro moments. Sitting at a red light, you reach for your phone before you even notice you're bored. Walking into an empty house, you turn on a podcast or music within 10 seconds because the silence feels heavy. At lunch, instead of sitting alone with your thoughts, you automatically open a video so you are not just sitting there. The problem is that these moves feel like conscious preferences when they are mostly pre-trained comfort responses firing on autopilot. And here's the most important detail. This does not mean you are doomed or broken. It means you are often stepping into decisions your brain has already preloaded based on years of training. You have rehearsed escape the silence thousands of times. Of course, that script runs fast. So the goal is not to yell at yourself to try harder in those moments. The real move is to retrain what your brain labels as easy and rewarding in silence. So when silence shows up, it is not just an empty space, it is a pressure test. And here's the most important detail: the pressure is not measuring your moral worth. It is measuring a design conflict that has been stacked against you for years. The problem is that your environment, your devices, even your routines are all engineered to make noise feel rich and rewarding, and silence feel flat and uncomfortable. Your phone offers instant reward with one thumb movement. Your apps are tuned to your exact preferences. Meanwhile, your quiet room, 4 walls, a chair, and your own thoughts. In other words, distraction has been optimized, silence has been neglected, and guess what? Your brain is wired to go where the reward is obvious and the effort is low. This is because, from a survival standpoint, conserving energy and seeking immediate comfort was a winning strategy. So, when you sit down in a quiet room to write, to study, or to think about your life, your brain does not see growth opportunity. It sees no clear reward, high effort, possible discomfort. Your goals, however, are different. You want long-term progress. You want discipline, skills, and a life you are proud of. That means choosing activities where the reward is delayed. Deep work, reflection, planning, practice. In this scenario, silence becomes the arena where 2 agendas collide: the brain's demand for immediate comfort and your desire for long-term change. You feel this as that strange tug-of-war inside a quiet moment. You told yourself, "I'll use this hour to finally start that project." But 10 minutes in, your thoughts wander, your hand reaches for your phone, your body looks for any excuse to stand up. Each time you abandon what you said you'd do, there is a tiny emotional cost, a bit more frustration, a bit more shame. Another data point for the story: I'm not disciplined. Over time, this becomes more than a habit. it becomes an identity. Silence no longer feels neutral. It feels like a mirror you do not want to look into. That is why studies find people will literally choose meaningless busy work or even mild electric shocks over just sitting alone with their thoughts. The conflict is that intense. So let's give it a name. Call it the quiet conflict, the silence test. That moment when the noise disappears and you find out which voice wins, the voice that wants comfort now or the voice that wants a better life later. Once you can name it, you can catch it in real time instead of drowning in vague anxiety. And here is where everything starts to shift. If silence is not a personal failing but a designed battleground, then you can redesign it. You can change what your brain expects to happen there. So here is where the illusion really cracks. You think silence is about your strength of character, but it is mostly about your setup. Motivation is overrated. Environment is more important. In other words, what surrounds your quiet moments determines how you behave inside them. Most people still believe, deep down, that if they just had more willpower, they would finally win in the quiet. However, this view is completely misguided. This is because your brain is not a moral judge. It is an energy accountant. All day long, it is scanning for the path of least effort with the highest immediate reward. Early in the morning, when your energy is high and your motivation is fresh, you can push back. But as the day goes on, fatigue shows up and something else takes over. Autopilot. Autopilot is not dramatic, it is boring and silent. You sit down for a deep work block and your phone is on the desk. One notification lights up the screen. Your hand moves before your values do. In this scenario, your environment has already made the decision. Your brain simply follows the easiest route to comfort. And guess what? This same script runs everywhere. Quiet evening on the couch, TV remote within reach. You tell yourself you will watch one episode, then read. The problem is that the remote is right there, and the book is in another room. Your brain is built for survival, not heroic discipline. It chooses the closest button, not the highest long-term payoff. During focus time on your laptop, you keep 3 extra tabs open: email, news, a video site. You promise yourself you will not touch them. But as your mental effort rises, your brain starts looking for relief. One tiny click, one quick scroll, one short video. Over days and weeks, those small environmental advantages for distraction beat your best intentions. You can win a few battles with raw willpower. You can white-knuckle through a silent hour, push the phone away, stare down the urge. But here's the most important detail. Your brain is wired to conserve energy and seek cognitive ease. Fighting. That wiring every day is like trying to swim upstream forever. Eventually, you get tired. The river does not. So the hopeful twist is this: you do not need a different brain. You need a different environment. If you redesign your silence so that the disciplined action is the easiest, closest, most obvious option, your brain's laziness starts working for you. Phone in another room. Only the document you need open. Notebook and pen already on the table when you sit down. Small constraints, clear cues. Suddenly, silence is not a test you keep failing. It becomes a channel that quietly pushes you in the right direction. So now the question becomes, what do you actually do with that channel? Most people think silence is just the absence of noise, an empty space you either endure or escape. However, this view is completely misguided. Empty silence is what happens when the noise stops and your brain has no assignment. It wanders, it worries, it replays arguments from 3 years ago. In other words, it becomes a playground for anxiety and distraction. Engineered silence is completely different. Engineered silence is pre-decided, ritualized, and it has a clear job for your brain. You do not fall into it, you step into it. There is a start, an end, and a script. This is because your brain hates vague effort but can relax into clear rules. For the next 10 minutes, I do exactly this. Suddenly, the quiet is not a void, it is a container. And guess what? You do not need a monastery to build this, you just need microsystems. Think of microsystems as tiny, repeatable routines you only do in silence. A 10-minute reflection at the same time each evening, a single 25-minute deep work block right after lunch, a 3-minute tomorrow planning ritual in your parked car before you go inside, same place, same cue, same quiet. The problem is that most people wait for motivation. They tell themselves, one day I'll sit for 2 hours and really focus. That is like saying, one day I'll walk into the gym and deadlift 200 pounds, when you have never picked up a barbell. Your attention, your emotional regulation, your tolerance for boredom, these are muscles. Silence is the discipline gym where you train them. So you start light, 5 minutes, not 50. One deep work block, not an entire silent retreat. You make the reps so small your brain cannot argue. In this scenario, the goal is not heroic performance, it is consistency. You are teaching your nervous system, when it gets quiet, we do something meaningful, instead of, when it gets quiet, we panic and grab the phone. Here's the most important detail. Engineered silence always gives your brain a clear focus. Research on mind wandering shows that unstructured quiet often drifts into worry and rumination. But when the task is specific, outline 3 bullet points, review the day, write one honest paragraph about what you avoided, your brain has somewhere to put its energy. The silence stops attacking you and starts serving you. So let's turn silence into exactly that. A designed challenge. Not a punishment, a workout. When you hear intentional silence in this video, I'm not talking about some mystical retreat in the mountains. I mean a short, pre-scheduled block with no music, no phone, no chatter, and one clearly defined task or question. In other words, you tell your brain, for the next few minutes, this is the only thing that exists. It might be solve this problem, read these pages, or answer this question, what actually matters today? The problem is that most people only meet silence by accident. Waiting rooms, slow Wi-Fi, awkward elevator rides. So the brain learns to associate quiet with boredom and discomfort. When you schedule it on purpose, you flip the script. You say, this is training, this is because I'm building discipline, not being deprived. Now here's the most important, here's the most detail. You start tiny. A 7-10 minute starter block. 1 per day, non-negotiable, that's it. Not an hour of monk-level stillness, just a small slice where your environment is quiet and your attention is single. And guess what? That short, predictable window is enough to start rewiring how your brain reacts when the noise drops. Think of a student. Instead of studying with videos on in the background and constant phone checks, they sit down for a 10-minute silent block. No music, notifications off, one textbook open, one set of practice problems. When the urge to grab the phone hits, they notice it and stay. That is the rep. In this scenario, an office worker pulls into the parking lot, turns off the radio, and spends 10 quiet minutes in the car planning the day on a notepad. No emails, no calls, just what are the 3 things that actually move my work forward? A creator might use a silent morning block to outline ideas, staring at a blank page until the first awkward sentences appear. It feels strange at first, but that is exactly why it works. Short, consistent reps matter because your brain hates unpredictable effort. Research on deliberate practice and routines shows that when a behavior is structured and repeated, the mental cost drops. Your system stops asking, do we really have to do this? And starts saying, oh, it's that time again. This is because the routine removes negotiation. Over time, focus in silence stops draining so much energy and starts to feel like a familiar mode. To make this visible, give your discipline a scoreboard. Keep a tiny notebook that only comes out during these silent blocks. Write the date, what you did, and one line on how it felt. 10-min planned day, felt restless. First 3 minutes calmer after. You're teaching your brain that silence produces a reward, progress you can see. So now you have this tiny block of quiet with a clear job. The next step is to turn it into something even more powerful, a silent micro-routine that slowly rewires how your brain sees discipline, reward, and comfort. A micro-routine is simply a small, repeatable action that lives in a 5-20-minute window and is always paired with silence. No music, no podcasts, no just one quick notification. In other words, it is a controlled environment where your brain learns, when it's quiet, I do this. And that might be journaling, reading a few pages, deep work on one problem, or planning tomorrow. Here's the most important detail. The silence is not an accident. It is the cue. You are using the absence of noise as the trigger for a specific behavior. So over time, your brain associates quiet with focus instead of boredom. This is because habits are context dependent. If every time the room goes silent, you reach for your phone, your brain learns that pattern. If every time the room goes silent, you open your notebook, it learns that instead. Let's make this uncomfortable in a useful way. One powerful, silent micro-routine is self-honesty journaling. Sit down, no sound, and answer one question. If someone watched a silent recording of my day, what would my actions say about my character? Not your intentions, not your goals, just your actual behavior. The problem is that most people never look at themselves this way, so their story about who they are drifts far away from what they actually do. In this scenario, the quiet becomes a mirror, not a distraction. You will notice patterns you were hiding under noise. The extra scrolling, the delayed start, the "I'll do it later" that never happens. And guess what? That sting you feel when you see the gap between your story and your actions is not failure. It is data. It is raw material for character. Every time you choose a silent micro-routine over noise, you are casting a vote for a different identity. I am the kind of person who can sit with my thoughts. I am the kind of person who does the hard thing without an audience. Over weeks, these votes add up. You start to trust yourself more because you have evidence, not just motivation speeches in your head. Look at how this plays out. A student replaces studying with background videos and constant phone checks with one 25-minute silent block each afternoon. No tabs open except what's needed. After 2 weeks, their grades are up slightly, but their confidence is up a lot. They have proof their brain can handle effort without constant reward hits. A creator does one silent hour each morning before the world wakes up. Same desk, same time, no sound. At first, it is uncomfortable and strangely loud inside their own head, but within a month, scattered ideas turn into 3 published pieces, a consistent posting rhythm, and a calmer relationship with their work. This is how long-term grit is built, not in dramatic public moments, but in the quiet, unshared decisions that nobody will ever clap for, those 5-20-minute, 5-20 silent reps are like push-ups for your attention and your honesty. If you can stay with yourself there, you can stay with yourself when life gets heavy. Those silent reps are the warm-up. Now we turn them into something even more powerful, an advantage most people will never have. Ask yourself a simple question. If your brain can't handle 5 quiet minutes with no phone, no music, no distraction, how is it going to handle a difficult life? In other words, if stillness feels unbearable, that is not a random quirk. That is feedback. It's showing you exactly where your discipline, your emotional regulation, and your focus are undertrained. Most people treat being alone with their thoughts like a punishment. However, this view is completely misguided. Solitude is a skill. This is because when you sit in intentional silence, you are asking your brain to stay present without the usual stream of immediate rewards. No notifications, no background noise, just you, your thoughts, and a bit of discomfort. And guess what? If you can train yourself to stay there calmly, everything else in life starts to feel easier by comparison. Here's the most important detail. Performance lives in these quiet pockets. Research on deep work and deliberate practice shows that distraction-free focus sessions are where high-level skills grow fastest. In this scenario, 20 minutes of silent, undisturbed effort on a hard task often beats 2 noisy hours of half-working, half-scrolling. A student who replaces study with background noise and constant phone checks with a single 25-minute silent block per day usually sees grades and confidence climb within weeks. The problem is that your brain loves comfort and energy conservation. It will always suggest the easy, noisy option, but when you design your environment so silence becomes the default for certain tasks, phone in another room, no music, one clear objective, you turn those minutes into a training ground. You are not just doing the work, you are teaching your nervous system that effort without instant reward is safe. Silence also upgrades your emotional discipline. Regular, intentional quiet time gives you space to process emotions instead of being dragged by them. You can anticipate stressors before they explode, rehearse difficult conversations, and notice the stories your brain is telling you. An office worker who spends 10 quiet minutes in the car before going in, not scrolling, just planning and breathing, walks into the building calmer, less reactive, and much harder to knock off balance. And in a world where almost everyone escapes silence instantly, that calm becomes rare, valuable. The person who can stay with themselves for 5 or 10 minutes without panicking is the person who can stay with a demanding project, a tough season, or a long-term goal. So imagine a future version of you who doesn't dread the moment the noise stops, you close the door, the world goes quiet, and your body doesn't tense up. It relaxes. You actually look forward to those small windows of solitude because you know that is where you become sharper, stronger, and more composed. So let's actually build that window of solitude into your day instead of hoping it appears by accident. For the next week, I want you to run a tiny experiment on yourself. A 7-day silence test. 10 minutes a day, no phone, no music, no notifications, just you, a notebook, and one question. Here's how it works. Once a day, you sit down, set a 10-minute timer, and at the top of the page, you write, "What should I really be doing with this time?" That's your anchor. That question keeps your brain from drifting into random worry. In other words, you're telling your mind, we're not here to scroll, we're here to choose. From there, you only have 3 options. You can plan, you can reflect, or you can work silently on one small task until the timer ends. Maybe you map your day, review yesterday, or finally start that email you've been avoiding. The problem is that most people wait to feel motivated before they do these things. In this scenario, you are flipping it. You start the silence first and let the discipline grow inside it. Now here's the most important detail. The first few days might feel bad, restless, bored, even a bit anxious. And guess what? That is not a sign that the challenge is failing. That is a sign that it is working. This is because your brain has been trained by your environment to treat every empty moment as a signal to seek immediate comfort. When you remove the noise, it panics a little. It is like taking sugar away from someone who snacks every hour. There is even research showing people would rather give themselves mild electric shocks than sit alone with their thoughts for a few minutes. So if you feel the urge, to grab your phone, congratulations. You are officially normal. Your job is not to feel calm. Your job is to stay seated until the timer ends and let your nervous system learn that silence now means intentional effort, not escape. You can also shape the silence test around your current goal. If you are a student, those 10 minutes might be one problem set question solved in complete quiet. If you are a professional, you could outline your top 3 priorities for the day before you open your inbox. If you are a creator, you might sketch a video outline or a rough idea list. Different lives, same ritual. Sit, write the question, no noise, one small win. To make this real, I want a public commitment from you. In the comments, write which habit you will pair with your 10 minutes of silence for the next 7 days. Planning, studying, writing, problem solving, anything. When you do that, you are not just trying a challenge, you are casting a vote for a new identity, the kind of person who can handle quiet and use it as a weapon. Because that is what this whole journey has really been about. Not proving that you are bad at silence, but proving that your struggle with silence was never a moral failure in the first place. It was an evolutionary mismatch. Your brain was built for survival in a noisy, dangerous world, not for calmly staring at a wall while your notifications scream from another room. The problem is that most people take that discomfort and turn it into shame. They think, if I were truly disciplined, 10 quiet minutes would be easy. However, this view is completely misguided. This is because your brain is wired to chase immediate comfort and quick reward. In other words, the moment the noise stops, your biology starts looking for an escape hatch. So we did something different. Instead of asking you to magically develop more willpower, we treated discipline as a design problem. You learn to shape your environment, to lower the friction to start, to use habit stacking and tiny rules so that the hard choice quietly became the easy one. And guess what? That is real discipline. Not a dramatic burst of effort, but a smart system that makes good behavior almost automatic. Here's the most important detail. Your test of character was never, do I feel perfectly calm in silence? Your real test is, will I keep showing up for these small, quiet reps when nobody is watching, when there is no applause, when the only reward is a slightly clearer mind? In this scenario, silence becomes a private gym for your attention. Every 10-minute block is a set. Every urge you ride out is another rep. This is where identity comes in. You are not the person who cannot handle stillness. You are becoming the kind of person who can tolerate a few minutes of discomfort in exchange for long-term power. The kind of person who lets silence act as a mirror and a training ground instead of something to escape with endless background noise. If your brain complains, that is fine. Let it complain while you sit, breathe, and stay. So here is your closing challenge, your proof test. Today, not tomorrow, set a 10-minute silence test. No music, no scrolling, no chatter. Just you, your thoughts, and one simple focus: planning, reading, thinking, or solving one meaningful problem. When the timer ends, write one sentence about what you noticed, then share your biggest insight in the comments. Because from now on, every quiet moment you reclaim is not empty time. It is evidence. It is one more vote for your new identity. One more piece of proof that your character is being built, rep by rep, in the silence you used to run from.